managers like this, they put Teddy up here, Teddy Riley featuring guy, and I used to always say, stop saying it. You can't feature somebody.
Yeah. But he really was. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. He's our architect. He was. Nah, because Teddy was doing it without Aaron.
Oh, man.
He said the level of self-awareness is at the Earth's core. That is funny. Whew. I gotta tell you, David Lee Roth's album, Eat 'Em and Smile, is such an, I don't know, man. This is a classic album. The musicianship on this album, anything after that is like, that first David Lee Roth album, woo! Smoking. I'm listening to this song, Elephant Gun. I remember, I had this album. I had the vinyl. I remember hearing that, man. Me and my friends lost it. We were like, what the heck? I mean, we knew about Billy Sheehan. I knew about, what's his name on drums? I can't remember his name. Dave Bissonette. I knew about him because I was into jazz. So I knew he was a good drummer. And I knew about Steve Vai because I was into Frank Zappa. I was into Frank Zappa because I liked Vinnie Colaiuta, who played with Frank Zappa. So I'd known about the three of them. So when Dave got them together, I was like, this is gonna be good, you know. So when the album came out, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, knowing Dave, he's gotta, if you come up with if your first band is a insane band with a genius guitarist, it's gonna take a lot for you to top that. So I was like, Dave's cooking up some craziness. And sure enough, when I heard the musicians he picked, I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. And I remember a lot of my friends were like, there's only David Lee Roth, bro. How good can they be? I was like, you don't know the guys he's picking. You know what I mean? At the time, Billy Sheehan was in Talus. And a lot of it was, A, I was into jazz. B, I was into metal. C, I was into some like outrageous, like I was into high musicianship. So I'd heard of Talus. You know, I'd heard of Talus and Billy Sheehan. And plus I'm from the Northeast, man. Like, you know, everybody in my town knew who Steve I was. Before he joined Billy Sheehan, before he joined David Lee Roth's band, he had came out with an album called Flexible. And he was doing crazy stuff on that album. So we knew who he was. And we knew who Talus was because, you know, they're from Rochester, New York. You know, they were from upstate New York. And we're in Jersey, and they were all over the place. You know, so they were in Jersey, they were in New York, they were everywhere. You know, so we'd known about Talus. And like I said, I was into jazz. So a lot of guys who like, the surfacey guys were like, what's he gonna do? I was like, you don't know the guys, he's cooking up something. He's not just getting good guys, like, just to have them in the band. He's trying to, you know, it's a D measuring contest. He's like, look, oh, I could have a bigger band than you guys. I could have a better bass player. I could have a guitarist that could do what you do, Eddie. I have a guitarist that could do what you could do. Alex, I got a drummer that can play circles around you. So that was a D measuring contest album. And I know it hurt Eddie because after Dave made Eat 'Em and Smile, which is really Eat the D and Smile, you know, Eat 'Em and Smile. And it hurt Eddie because Eddie came out with Oh You Ate One Too. So Eddie heard it. You know, Eddie got the message, man. You know, but after that, after Dave did that, he went in a completely different direction. And I was like, nah, dog. That ain't it. That ain't it. But that first album, that first David Lee Roth album, man, whoo. As a matter of fact, I want to hear that whole album. Eat 'Em and Smile full album, good. Yeah. Shy Boy. I remember Shy Boy. That was a what do you call it? That was a Talus song. Yeah, everything on that album was just everything on that album was like, look at me, Eddie. Look at me, Eddie. Look what I did. Look what I got ready for you. Look what I did. I can get bands. I can put a band together even better than your band. Oh. David wrote a Spanish version. He wrote a Spanish. I didn't know Eat 'Em and Smile, he had a Spanish edit of it. He's singing it in Spanish. That's why he was big in South America and Central America. No way. was smart. That was smart. This Joker, Steve Vai, is crazy. He makes his guitar talk, man. This album is crazy. It always trips me out how guitarists can make the guitar literally like talk. This was such a well-written album, man. This is such an underrated album. Oh, he's talking about the Statue of Liberty. Okay. I remember I read an interview, a Steve Vai interview, and he was talking about, they asked him, they said, yeah, man, how did you hear about David Lee Roth? He said, I was a fan of Van Halen. I was always like a big fan of Eddie, you know. He said, and I heard that they broke up, you know. He said, then all of a sudden, he said at the time he was touring his album. It's a little club tour, you know. He said he was playing in a club at Sunset Strip. He said there was barely anybody in the audience. He said, and Dave, like at the end, Dave walks in. And he stays, he's sitting at the bar, the last few songs, and he's listening. Then he walks up after the show, he's like, hey man, I'm putting a band together, bro. Why don't you see, why don't you swing by? He gave me the address and everything. He said, then he walked in, and Greg was already there. He walked in the next day, he went to the rehearsal studio. And Greg was already there. And I think Greg and Billy Sheehan were already there. No. He said, if you know any bass players, let me know. And he gave him, and it wasn't even the next day, it was like a few days later. He gave him Billy Sheehan's number. He's like, have you ever heard of this guy, Billy Sheehan? He was like, I really want a guy, a really, really good bass player. He said, you ever hear this guy, Billy Sheehan? He was like, no. It's like, yeah, man, you should check him out. Here's his number. He said, next thing he knows is Dave walks in. What's his name? Steve walks in, and Billy's there. And they're like, hey, bro, what's up? And what happened is, I think Greg Bissonette was already there. He got referred to by like somebody else. Greg was well known in the jazz circles, but I mean, a lot of times jazz guys, they play rock because they want to make money. You know, sweet gig, make a lot of money. So I think Greg was playing with Maynard Ferguson at the time that I remember. He was playing with Maynard Ferguson before he got with David Lee Roth. Greg Bissonette, he can play Latin. He can play anything. You know, he's an incredible drummer, you know. I remember getting issues of Modern Drummer magazine, and they would have those little plastic square vinyls that you open up the magazine. It's got those flimsy vinyls, and you can stick them on your record player, and they play the songs. Greg Bissonette, this was before he was at David Lee Roth. He was like, he had an article in there, you know, this is the guy who plays with Maynard Ferguson and blah, 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 blah. Maynard Ferguson had a big band, and it's hard to like play with a big band. It's hard to play with, it's like playing with a choir. Like, two things are hard: playing with a big band, playing with a choir, and playing if you're in like orchestra, like if you're part of the pit band. But that's a little easier because you have a percussion section and you got somebody conducting it. But if you're in a big band, a big jazz band, it's like pulling a bunch of stallions. You know, it's the same thing with being a choir. I've played in big band jazz ensembles, and I've played in gospel choirs. It's the same thing. It's hard. As a drummer, it's hard. Because like I said, it's like you're trying to hold a bunch of stallions. You're trying to hold them back. You know what I mean? A lot of times, even, I don't know if you guys see the streams I do, our worship team rehearsal. I live stream every Sunday, the worship team rehearsals. I usually start the live stream at like 8:40, you know, after that, you can hear me conducting the band. No, keep up with the time, slow it down, keep up with the time, slow it down. Like it's because it's hard, you know. When you got like 7 or 8 singers, you got 2 guitarists, you got a bassist, you got a pianist, you might have a percussionist. It's hard, you know. Like, I've been in 20-piece ensembles, you know. You have to, the thing is, it gets easier if you're, well, I'll say this. I don't know if you guys see my live streams, but that's part of the reason why I always start my live stream practices playing along to a metronome, because the only way it's really manageable is that if your own metronome, your own personal metronome, your own personal internal clock is strong enough. Because if not, you'll listen to them. If everybody starts going all over the place, if the BPMs are at a certain level and they're playing slightly ahead, your instinct will be to rush with them. And you can't. You got to sit in your pocket. You got to sit where you are, where the metronome is, and trust that if they rush ahead, they're going to hear it and they're going to start pulling back. Or if they slow down, and the music starts slowing down, like I said, your instinct is to slow down with them. So you got to stick to your metronome and be able to trust your internal metronomes that they catch up to you, man. So the only way to really, the only way that it gets easier, your internal metronome has to be rock solid. It has to be solid, or else it's just all gonna, it's all gonna fall apart. You know. I hate the song. I'm Easy. You could have kept that. Tobacco Road. Big Trouble. Big Trouble was a crazy song. LeBron! What up, LeBron? What up, LeBron? Yeah, Big Trouble. I still know that song on guitar. The little things that Steve I does in here is like crazy. I used to know this song note for note, even the solo. That was when I was younger and I had no responsibility, so all I did was just play music. I miss playing guitar. I gotta get another guitar ready. I still remember that stuff. It's a great song, man. I wish I could play it on YouTube. They'll definitely pull the stream down. Whew. Oh, my daughter doesn't have to work today. I would love to have an album with Tosin Abasi and Steve Vai on it. Ba 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 ba. I had some bacon cheddar hamburgers last night. I made some bacon cheddar hamburgers for dinner last night. It was cool because my wife didn't have to cook. She was like, thank you. So, and what I did was I took the fries, I took a plate, well, not a plate, it's like a grill, whatever thing, where it's got like the bottom part and the top part. Well, I took the bacon, put it on the bottom part and the top part, put the fries there, and after I put the fries there, I put that on the bottom, put the burgers on the top, and let the bacon smell permeate, like the whole essence and residues of the bacon go into the French fries and the hamburgers. So it all just kind of marinated together. All the bacony French fry, bacon French fry, hamburgery goodness. I let it all marinate. And then after that, when I took them out, it worked because my younger son was like, wow, those hamburgers smell good. He was like, At first he was like, what's that? I said, that's the burgers. He was like, they smell good. I was like, yeah. You know, fries are nice and crispy and bacony, you know. But my other son, he doesn't like beef. He only eats chicken and fish. Chicken, fish, and turkey. He's like, man, I don't eat, beef. And I was like, I said, well, you ain't eating it. Run it. I said, you ain't eating his burger? He's like, nope. I said, run it. My other son looked at me like, I was like, bro, you too slow on the draw, bro. You know, like the commercial says, you gotta be quicker than that. Too slow on the draw. I know he was kind of like, oh man, but it was all good. And then usually we do pizza popsicle movie night. Well, we made it a movie night tonight. We all sat around and watched, what's the name of that movie? The first Terminator. Eating our burgers and stuff, watching the first Terminator. So, it was pretty cool. It's a cool night last night, you know. I wish my daughter was here. My oldest daughter. It sucks, man. You know. It's like this, man. When you have kids, I don't know, man. When you have kids, man, I don't want my kids to leave home. Like we were raised with our kids, the kids, staying home, they go to college, they stay home. you know, and stay home, you know. But growing up, we all had our own rooms. I grew up in an 11-bedroom house. 11 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. So space wasn't an issue. It was never an issue. So, you know, like when I went to save money, because, you know, I was like, okay, I want to marry this woman. I need to save money. So I moved back home. Saved money. Our wedding was like about $30,000. Paid cash for it. Our wedding plus the reception, the honeymoon, that was something different. I can't remember how much that cost, but the wedding and the reception and all of that, and the tuxedos, all of that stuff, the limo, all of that stuff, it's about $30,000. Cash, paid cash for it all. You know. So, you know, it was pretty cool, you know. And we had a huge wedding. When I say huge, we had 10 bridesmaids, 10 groomsmen, 2 flower boys, because there's, you know, there were no girls. You know, my wife's got a bunch of uncles. The only girl was an aunt, you know, and I think her Uncle Stephen had a girl, but she was too young. She was way too young. But yeah, so yeah, we had a huge wedding. Huge. Our wedding was big anyway. It was like, you know, it was like, oh, Mark and Danielle are getting married. Oh, it was like everybody was like, oh, we gotta go. You know, our wedding was like a big event. So, you know, but yeah, well, it was cool, man. You know, it's crazy because my wife, man, dudes were like intimidated by her, you know, cause she's pretty, she's smart, she's pretty and she's really smart and she's really popular. So dudes were intimidated by her. I was like, you might be intimidated by her, but that's my wife. And Joker was like, man, you ain't never gonna, man, she ain't gonna give you the time of day. Like, people literally like, man, I don't know. They were like, man, you work at a day labor place. You make minimum wage. I was like, that don't mean nothing. She's still gonna be my wife. Man, she makes money. She was in the corporate world, all that stuff at the time. You know, man, you ain't gonna get her. I was like, you might be a sucker, but I'm gonna marry that girl. You know, I was like, you ain't you. You are you. I'm me. I'm not you. I'm me. You know, and my wife was kind of like, you know, my wife was like, the guys that she didn't like were the guys that pursued her. And the guys that, there was one guy who pursued her, that she liked, but she was like, he's fool's gold. He was like, nah, you're not the one for me. Nope, you're on something else. And she was right, because he wasn't on something else. He was on something completely different. You know, but yeah, she was like, she was kind of like, I'm not interested in any of these guys. Like one guy, now he's a filmmaker. She was like, no. You know, another guy, he's like a restaurateur now up in New York. She's like, no. You know, a lot of guys had their eye on her. But I came from Jersey to Atlanta. I mean, but they were from, one dude was from Florida, one dude was from Brooklyn, you know. At the time, at the time, I had come from New York. I was living in Brooklyn. I moved down here. I'm from Jersey, but I ended up moving. I ended up moving to Manhattan to play music, and then it just got too expensive, so I moved to Brooklyn, where it's a little cheaper. I was actually living in Harlem. It was like a little expensive in Harlem, so I went to Brooklyn, a little further out, but it was cheaper. It was worth it. And a little more crime too. This is when Brooklyn was Crooklyn, you know. But yeah, you know, I was living in Brooklyn and I moved down here. So, but yeah, it was kind of like, you know, as soon as I saw her, like our first date, man, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna marry this woman. Yeah. It was almost like a blind date situation. It was like I didn't know her from a can of spray paint. A friend of mine who's a lawyer now, it's like, hey, I got a girl I want you to meet. He introduced us, and at the time I was talking to this guy. I was backstage at a concert. I was talking to this guy about whatever, and we were really engrossed in conversation. And the guy who's a lawyer, he's a producer too. He wrote a bunch of songs and stuff, but like I said, he's a lawyer now. But he ended up, like he'd look over contracts for me and all that stuff, like recording contracts and stuff. But he, like there was one contract I got offered. It was a production contract. A contract as a producer to be part of an in-house production team. Oh, that was weird. It just stopped. And it was a jerk deal. Everything I did, I got no credit for it. Number one. Number two, like I was part of a production team. I would be part of a production team, and it was kind of like, when you do that, man, they catch you for your best years of productivity. After that, they kick you to the curb, you know. So after the contract was up, I would have to, I'm back to square one. Except a lot of my best stuff is gone. You know, even if you get to a point where you make, even if you start tucking stuff, you start tucking beats, they lock you in a contract so you can tuck the beat. You might be like, okay, I'm gonna keep this song to the side. Y'all get these, I'm gonna keep these. Music is a shelf life, and you can have those hot beats. It might be hot now, but you hold them too long, they start sounding dated. So you're kind of stuck, So it's kind of, So you gotta, if you want to stay on a team, you don't want to get dropped, or they won't drop you from the contract. They'll just kick you to the curb and not work with you anymore. And you're locked into a contract. You can't work with anybody. So I was like, nah. And plus, we're in Metro Atlanta. Part of the whole scene in Metro Atlanta, what they do, they take the songs, they bring them to the strip club. And if the girls start dancing to it, it's a hit. And I didn't want to be part of that scene. I've never been into going to strip clubs or anything like that. Like I'm the kind of guy where I'd be like why are you here? Some chick dancing in front of me, I'm like, I don't need to see you. I'm not the kind of kid, I don't want to get worked up, especially if you ain't got no woman, what you gonna do? Nah, Brian, you know what I mean? You gonna go home frustrated, We're gonna start tricking. Now, and not only that, I'll be honest, you know, that was back when I had my dreads and, you know, like I had girls who, a friend of mine was a bouncer, and they would come off the stage and start like, they would go right over to him. And this is back when I was young and virile and good looking. You know, they would kind of like saunter over like, hey, what's up? You know, and they start kicking it to my boy. And they start like, hey, you know, what's your name? Blah, 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 trying to get to know me. And I'm like, nah, bro. You ain't the type of woman I'm not, man. You know, I may sound weird, but I ain't wasting my money at a strip club. I don't need to see you half naked. That's for your man. I'm not, you know, I don't know. I see strippers and I'm like, you smell like cigarettes and alcohol. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nah. Like, you know what I mean? You smell like cigarettes and alcohol. And, you know, just not with it, man. So, you know, this dude is rock climbing. You know, so, I know it's been about 40 minutes. Yeah, 47 minutes. Why not? That's the first third. Bro, let me tell you something, man. I don't know if Isaiah is still there, but yeah, man. She loves the fact that I play music. You know, she wanted to marry a music lover. You know. You know. You know, yeah, so, yeah, man, like a lot of guys, like for me, bro, for years, man, I messed around with women, of course, you know, but I didn't date them. They were like friends. They were, you know, they were my buddies, my cut buddies, you know. We had agreements. You see who you want to see, I see who I want to see. You start catching feelings, or I would word it as, if any of us starts catching feelings, let's agree to break it up. Translation, if you start catching feelings, it's over. Because I ain't catching feelings. You know, but yeah, so I've always been like, I refrain from dating or having like one female because music is my mistress, man, you know, and, you know, she's fully behind me, man. she does all the paperwork. She does all the backline stuff, contracts and stuff like that. You know. So yeah. So yeah. You know, so yeah, she's a good woman, bro. I caught her, you know. I caught a good one, man. I definitely caught a good one with her. You know. So, you know. And I'll say this, bro. When I met my wife, man, we knew we were supposed to be married. First date, we knew. It was like all kinds of stuff. Like I wanted to propose to my wife. You know, I've always wanted to propose to the woman who would become my wife in Central Park. She always wanted to be kissed by the man who would eventually be her husband in Central Park. I wanted somebody from New Orleans who was college educated, had pretty hands, pretty feet, a dancer's body, has dimples, all kinds of stuff, bro. And she wanted somebody from New York and New Jersey who had the Michael Jordan kind of chiseled look. I ain't got it no more. I'm more like the fatty Jordan. You know what I mean? Or old man Jordan or whatever. But back then, you know, I could, you know, I had the Michael Jordan chiseled basketball kind of look. She wanted someone who was willing to take her to the ballet, who loved the arts, who loved music, was a music lover. She wanted somebody who was intelligent, somebody who was passionate, had wisdom, like Daniel in the Bible. The prophet Daniel in the Bible had wisdom. I think I said passionate. She wanted someone who did a bunch of stuff. The very last thing, she wanted to be the perfect person. She wanted her man, she wanted her future husband to have a list, and that she would be the perfect woman on her list. And it's literally like we're supposed to be, we're completely supposed to be married. There's all kinds of stuff, man. There's all kinds of stuff, you know. She wanted somebody with a little thug in them. I've been to prison. You know, I used to be a street pharmacologist. You know, I was a musician who was a street pharmacologist who, you know, and if you were a plug, we robbed a few plugs. You know, my next move was robbing banks. That was my next move, robbing banks. I had 2 banks scoped out. I had First National or whatever, something, Jersey National Bank. I think it's Jersey National. I had a Bank of America and a Jersey National scoped out. I ixnayed on the Jersey National because one of my boys, Duck Gibson, he robbed it and got caught. I said, I'm not robbing that bank. So I had my eyes scoped on Bank of America. I had the getaways and everything. I had everything set up. And I just decided to just change my life. You know, I gave up music. I had walked away from music for a while because I had just got sucked up into the whole illegal life. You know, I was going to rob a bank and just go buy a big old package and just make a bunch of money off it. You know, buy maybe 3 keys and just flip it. You know, and then leave the state. Go to Georgia or Virginia Beach. When I came up, all the dope boys, that's what they would go. They would go to North Carolina, they would go to Georgia, they would go to Virginia. I was like, yeah, that's the move. You know, this is the 90s, man. You know, well, that's pretty much what you did. You didn't go to D.C. because D.C. was like a murder capital. It was Dodge. We called it Dodge City. D.C. was Dodge City at the time. You know, so a lot of that whole lifestyle I got absorbed into. You know, to the point where I stopped playing, man. I stopped playing. You know, I got caught up in the money and the lifestyle. And I just stopped playing. You know, and then I just decided to change my life. And I moved to Georgia. I gave up everything. I gave up music, gave up everything. You know, I gave up the illegal life. I decided to make a pivot, man. And it was like the best pivot of my life, man. That pivot saved my life. It saved my life. It changed my life. There were parts that were hard, but I was so glad to make the pivot. I didn't care. I didn't care at all, man. I wanted something better than what was going on at the time. And my conscience was really eating at me. I was like, so many times I had almost gotten my life almost ended. I can't really say too much on YouTube. A couple times my life almost ended. And I was like, man, you're cutting it close, man. You know, a couple of my friends were dying. You know, they're going to jail for like life. You know what I mean? Catching bodies. You know, or dudes they were just dying in car accidents, like that. And I was like, man, I can't. It's only a matter of time, man. It's a numbers game. You know, eventually your number's gonna come up. I was like, I'm good on it. I walked away from it all. You know, and I just started all over. Moved in with my mama. You know, she was living down here in Roswell at the time. It's a pretty nice part of town. Living in Roswell, so I was living in one of her spare rooms. I think I was working at like pet supermarket and Payless. So I had 2 jobs, pet supermarket and Payless. You know, I was just focusing on me, getting right spiritually. You know, and yeah, like I said, and even before that. Before I started working at Pet Supermarket and Payless, I started working at, Pet Supermarket and Payless. And it was just too much. One was in Roswell and one was in Smyrna, where Julia Roberts is from. It was in Smyrna. And if you know where, one is Fulton County. Roswell, Fulton County. And Smyrna's Cobb County. I was like, man, it's too much. And I quit both of them. I went to People Ready. This is back when it's called Labor Ready. I went to People Ready. And I was making minimum wage as a construction laborer. And, you know, eventually, those places, man, a lot of those people are transient. A lot of them are on drugs or drinking or whatever. You know, it's like where the homeless drunk people go to make a few dollars and what have you. You know, and I was just doing my thing, just working. You know, and that's when I met my wife. We became friends. You know. We met, that was before, it was before I met my wife. I met my wife while I was there. And then we went on the first date. And I was like, yeah, we're gonna get married. Later on, I realized she was telling her roommates, yeah, he's gonna be my husband. So, like, we knew, the first date, we knew. It was so obvious. Her friends were like, yeah, they're gonna be married. Yeah, of course. Like, it was obvious. it was obvious to everybody we should be married. It was like more, I call it moronically obvious. It was so obvious and moronically we were supposed to be married. And then, right after that, and one of the things, I'll tell you this, my wife, one of the things that attracted her to me was that she knew I was dead broke, and I was working at a day labor company, but I saved all my money, and I would take her to these really nice restaurants, and she said, you know what, I knew I was making way more money than him, but I knew he was a good guy, and he would take care of me, you know, so I knew I would be taken care of. I knew I was good, you know, I knew, like, if he was willing to do all that just to impress me, yeah, he's a good dude, he's got a good heart, and, yeah, so, and there's nothing wrong with going all out. It just depends, go all out for the right one. If you go all out for a woman who all she sees you is like an ATM, and then after that, it was kind of like right after our first date, there was a woman at the day labor at what was called Labor Ready back then. She was like, yo, I got this company. They need a groundsman. I don't want to send anybody there. She said, but you're the only one. You don't drink. You don't do drugs. You never come in here half hungover. You're consistent. You're a smart guy. I get nothing but good reports from people when I send you out. This job is good. You stay there, and you'll turn it to a permanent job. She's like, I trust you with it. I was like, all right. And I went there and hit the ground running. And they hired me. And I worked myself up from, I went from a groundsman to a lead tech. I was a groundsman, and I was a punch tech, which you go in and clean out all the vacant apartments, and you sweep it out, make sure all the trash is out and everything. And then they put me to school for HVAC and like plumbing and stuff like that, light plumbing and light electrical. And I became a maintenance tech, and then I became a lead tech, and then I was leaving the company. So when I left the company, this is after a few years, I left the company. They were actually I left the company, and I actually went to this one company, Emily or something like that. And they actually wanted to make me a regional supervisor. They said, well, we don't have any tech jobs open, but from looking at your resume, you want to be a regional supervisor? Which a regional supervisor is, you're over multiple properties. I was like, sure. And then they were like, well, do you have a background? We gotta run a background check. I was like, yeah, I got a background. And I went to prison in the 90s. They're like, dang, we can't hire you. He said, but like, you're a perfect candidate for a regional supervisor. I wasn't frustrated. I was like, okay, well, whatever. I moved on to another place, became a tech. So I worked my way up, man. And then I got back into music. Like, she was like, you really need to get back into music. Another friend of mine, Stacy Brown, who's a drummer, he was like, you really need to get back into music. Another guy, Mike Pope, he was like, these are like really influential people. These are people who were actually in my wedding. That's how close they are to me. But you really need to get back into. You really need to get back into music. And one dude showed up to my house with a bass. He was like, "You're playing now." Another dude showed up to my house. "Hey man, I got a full drum set, cymbals and everything, $200. It's all the 5-piece drum set, hardware, stands, cymbals, $200. I didn't do that. So I was back in the game, baby. But like I said, I had walked away from it. And even I'll say this, before I walked away from it, there's a guy named Tim Boyce. He goes by Burns Bradshaw. He's an artist. He and I used to hang out. This dude had money. He still got money. He was like, money. He had money. And everybody kind of came to him with their hands out. He and I were cool. He was my friend. I didn't want anything from him. He was my friend. I didn't want money. I had my own money. And even if I was dead broke, he was my friend. You know what I mean? So, and the thing is, he was biracial. So it was kind of like, we were in the hood at the time, and people kind of see him as a sucker, and he can get money off him, because he's got the gray eyes and curly hair. At the time he had dreads, really light skinned, pretty boy looking, you know. He was like, "You're a good dude, man." He was like, "You're the only person that never asked me for money or never tried to scam money out of me or anything." He's like, "You're the only person." He's like, "You're the only guy I can trust, bro." You know? And that's how me and him got really, really close, man. Like I said, he was my boy, bro. This was beyond, like, he knew a lot about music, man. He taught me about publishing, about copyright, all that stuff. He taught me about recording, So I was asking stuff. I was picking his brain about the music industry, and we would talk music, and that's it, man. And at the time, he was on H real bad. He had a real bad habit, And, I was selling, I was selling envy. Let me be honest. I was selling envy. But it was just kind of like, I stepped out of the life. I made the pivot. And I think not long after that, he made the pivot. Well, yeah, man. I had a pretty interesting life. A really, really interesting life. I got to travel around the world. I've seen the highest and highs and the lowest of the lows. I was still here, man. Married. 4 kids later, happily married. Got 4 big kids. Life ain't perfect. It ain't easy. I lived a good life, man. I have a good life, man. I exercise because I plan on staying around. You know what I mean? I can, like, people say, "Oh, I'm blessed." I can say I'm blessed. Nothing's perfect. We're not balling out of control. We're rich, nothing like that. It ain't perfect. But it's a good life, man. I live a really, really good life. I can't ask for anything. I got everything I wanted. I got everything I always wanted. A wife, 4 kids, and music. My health, my right mind, I got everything, Like, to be honest, I didn't think I was going to live this long. I didn't think I would live to be 59. I didn't think I was going to make it to 20. And then when I made it to 20, I was like, surely I'll be gone by 27. When I made it to 27, I was like, 30 is the end of the road. So by the time I made it to 30, I was like, okay, something's going on. And then when I turned 35, I met my wife. So, I don't know how long I've been on this thing, but I think it's been long enough. I skipped arm day yesterday, so it's arm day today. Poland, okay. All right, here we go. Take this clock off my neck. But yeah, man, I live a good life, man. Like I said, man, I got good friends. I got a good wife. I got good kids. You know. You know, we ain't rich. You know. And plus, I'll be honest, man. We grew up pretty comfortable. You know. My mom, you know, my mom did a good job as a single. My mom did better in terms of providing. My mom did better as a single mom than most parents do with in a two-parent home. In terms of providing, yeah. My mom was an incredible provider. You know, my mom worked it out. She made it happen. You know, so I didn't want to, you know, one of the things I didn't want to do, I didn't want to follow in my dad's footsteps. And AP, what up? I didn't want to follow in my dad's footsteps. You know, my dad was strung out on drugs. You know, he was strung out on drugs, man. You know, planting families all over the place. I had a family over here, family over there. You know, I got 2 younger brothers and a younger sister. I'm gonna be honest. I think I got 3 younger brothers. Cause I know a dude named Lenny. Lenny and his wife had 4 kids. And one of them kids looked nothing like Lenny. And they don't look like the mama. Lenny was he was a black Latino kid. He was a black Latino dude. And Lenny, all of his kids are really light skinned with really curly hair and really light greenish gray eyes. His wife is white and Lenny's a black Latino. So all of his kids look almost white, except the youngest. The youngest looked like somebody else's daddy. He looks completely different. And everybody was like, yo, man, that's your little brother. I was like, because me and Lenny were partners. We used to work together. And we used to hustle together. We worked at this clothing warehouse. And we used to hustle. And I was like, that ain't Lenny's kid. That is not Lenny's kid. I was like, oh no, that ain't Lenny's kid. And everybody was like, bro, that's your brother's, that's your father's kid. I was like, nah. And I remember my dad saying, everybody keeps saying that's my kid. And I was like, well, Dad, were you sleeping with her? He's like, yeah, but everybody keeps saying that ain't my kid. I'm like, yeah, I think that's my little brother. Yeah. Yeah, my dad was a trip, man. My dad was a trip. I was like, yeah, I think that's my little brother. My dad doesn't want to admit it, but I think that's my little brother. You know. I was like, sure, Dad, sure. Are you sure? Man, that ain't my kid. I'm like, okay. Okay. If it's, okay. You know. If you cool, I'm cool. If you cool with it, hey. I wonder what happened to the kid, man. I think Lenny died. Lenny died of a heart attack. You know. You know, he lived an incredibly unhealthy life, and he looked incredibly unhealthy. So I think Lenny croaked. Last I heard, Lenny. As a matter of fact, there was a girl that I was messing with back then. She was Italian and Puerto Rican. When we broke up, she went back to Puerto Rico. And then somehow we got in touch with each other. I know how. She tracked me down from Facebook. And she DM'd me on Facebook. And she's like, yeah, I've been looking for you. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I was like, you know what, I'm sorry. Sorry for how, sorry for how everything turned out. She was like, you don't have to be sorry. You were good to me. You were good to me. It's like, okay. She was like, I was looking for you. I've been looking for you. She said, I went to Lenny's house to see if you were there. She said, Lenny's gone. Lenny, he died. I was like, what? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'm married now. So at the time, we only had 2 kids. I thought, I'm married now, so. I'm married now, so I don't. Sorry, I'm married, So, but she was good people, man. She was real good people. Just wasn't my wife, What's this? This little man playing drums, There she is. Wow. Jacqueline de Fridas Rodriguez. My oldest daughter is so hilarious, man. She really is. She's hilarious. My youngest daughter's emotional like her dad. Alright. Enough putting it off. Let's get it done. Oof. That felt good. That felt really good, actually. Sasha, what up? Hey. Hey. Yeah, it was crazy though. Because the girl, Jacqueline, she was mad. I had this happen twice. One time I had 2 ex-girlfriends do that. I'm married, she's married. I'm married with kids, she's married with kids. They want to do the sneaky link thing. Like the one girl, Jacqueline, she's like, she tried it twice. She moved back to Puerto Rico, got married, had a kid. She calls my number. She's like, hey, I'm coming back to the States. I'm coming back to Jersey. I'm like, yeah? She's like, yeah, where are you living? I'm like, why? She's like, you know, maybe we can hook up. I'm like, at the time, I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, I don't think I want to. I don't like going backwards. And then after that, I left. And I moved to Brooklyn. I moved to Manhattan first. And then Harlem got too expensive. So then I moved to Brooklyn. This is before all the gentrification stuff. You know, I moved to New York just to, to get into the music scene. And like the jazz music or whatever. It's a big scene. It's still a big scene in New York. But after that, I left. I left Jersey, went to New York. We lost touch, and then she ended up coming back to the States a while later. I get married. So at the time I'm married with 2 kids, and she came back to the States. She's married with kids. She was looking for me. She went to our hometown to link up with me. I'm like, girl, you old news. Like, nah, I had to block her, man. I had to block her on Facebook. Then there was another girl, of my old girlfriends. My friend Ronnie, she was my boy Ronnie's cousin. And then she's like, hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. I see you still doing music and this and that, blah, blah, blah. I think about you all the time, and I'm like, okay. So I'm like, where's this going? So we're going back and forth. I'm like, you do know I'm married. I'm married with, like, our youngest was like maybe 2 at the time or something like that. So you do know I'm married. She's like, yeah, I see you're married. You got 4 beautiful kids, blah, blah, blah. You got a beautiful wife. And then she's like, well, maybe you could fly to Jersey and we could kind of rent a hotel and link up. Block? Like, nah, it's not happening. And then there was another girl named Ruth. I didn't have anything to do with her. She just decided, she was friends with my sister, my older sister. And she just decided to pour her heart out. Oh, Mark, I already, and I kind of knew she had a crush on me. I could kind of tell, but I was somewhere else. I wasn't thinking about women. I was thinking about music. My focus was music, and that's it. That's it. I didn't want anything to come between me and music, so I wasn't really. And she was like, I always had a crush on you, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, where's this going? She's like, well, I live in South Carolina. Block. I'm like, man. And then my wife had that happen. A dude that always liked her
was he pursued her, and he's like a filmmaker now. He slid in her DMs, you know, in like her on Facebook and whatnot. And it's like, hey, and then she goes to me. My wife goes to me. She goes, promise you won't say anything. I mean, promise you won't lose it. I was like, yeah, promise. She was like, such and such. I think he was trying to sneaky link with me. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, yeah, you know, he was in my messages, like, you know. I was like, what? She goes, yeah, I think he was testing the waters to see what I would do. And I was like, man, whatever. It's crazy, man. I'm like, people move on. But I guess we live in a day and age now where that's kind of what you do. You know, I ain't with it, but I guess that's what you do now, you know. You know, and she actually had that happen too. Another dude who owns a restaurant in New York, you know. He used to live down here, and my wife and him, they had eyes for each other. He tried some foolishness. My wife was like, promise you won't do anything. Promise you won't do anything. I said, I'm not going to do anything. She said, I was afraid to tell you. She said, but I got some advice, and the person who I got advice from, the woman that she got advice from was like, you need to tell Mark, because if you don't say anything, it's going to seem like you kept it a secret on purpose to, like, you know, so you need to tell him. So she was like, yeah, she told me that she was like, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to know if, I didn't want Mark to kind of lose his mind and beat him up or something like that. She was like, and the advice was like, you need to tell him anyway. That's your husband. You need to tell him. So she told me. I was like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's kind of lame, man. Like, I don't want to call him a lame because I don't like calling people names. That's kind of lame. That's lame. Like, really? That's lame, man. You know? You're doing it like that? Come on, dog. You know? Out of all these women out here, come on, bro. Stop it. You know? But yeah, so, you know, stuff like that is lame, man. Oh, that's why I bent it. I'm like, I don't know why I bent that. That's why I bent it. But yeah, so I had a really, really wild life, man. But I got some good friends out of it, man. You know, I had some really, really good friends out of it. I saw a lot, man. I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. You know. I'm fortunate enough to have survived it all. Well, I'll be honest, man. I knew I was going to give my life to God. And I remember early on thinking, if I'm going to give my life to God, I want to do as much as possible. I want to do as much as possible before I give my life to God. That sounds good. I don't suggest it at all, because you could die in the process. So, but yeah, I wanted to experience as much as possible I got experience being called the N-word in front of the Roman Colosseum when I went to Italy. You know, been to France, been to England. Been to Kenya, been to South Africa, been to Mexico. I went to Mexico City, and then later on I went back for my honeymoon. Went to Cancun, Bermuda, Bahamas, Hong Kong, Japan, so many places. Been to a lot of places. Canada, like I went to Montreal, went to Toronto, all over the States. Went to Puerto Rico, went to Haiti, went to Argentina, Rio, so many places. The one place I wanted to go, now I don't want to go, is mainland China. I don't want to go there. No, I don't want to go there. I wanted to go there at one point. Mainland China, I always wanted to go to mainland China. I wanted to go to India. I wanted to go to Russia. And I wanted to go to Australia. I still want to go to Australia. I'm 50-50 on Russia. They're at war. Still want to go to India. You know, I love Indian culture. You know, I think it's dope, man. You know, I love their culture. You know, I love their history, you know, their cultural history. Pre-colonial, European colonialization. You know, they have a very rich history, you know. Yeah, I want to go to Thailand, definitely. You know, I want to say Angkor Wat is in Thailand. I want to see all that stuff, man. I want to see all that stuff. You know, I saw Stonehenge. Yeah, I want to see all those. You know, I want to see stuff like that. You know, there's a couple places I want to see. I'm trying to think of the other place. Göbekli Tepe. I want to go there. I want to see that. So there's a bunch of places that I want to check out. You know, like I'm heavy into history, man. I love history. I love studying the history of man. You know, I love history. You know, the only way you're gonna really understand what's going on now is if you understand the history and why things like the only way you understand the present is you gotta know the past. You gotta know the past. You know what I mean? I used to be so enamored and so like fascinated by history that I would just go to graveyards and just read the tombstones and be like, and just wonder like, wow, like this dude, what was life like when he was alive? You know, I've just been fascinated always with history. You know, but because a book can only tell you this. I think what gets me is a book can only tell you so much about how it was back then. You know, and usually the story is always painted by the victor always tells the story. You know what I mean? So it's always written from some kind of somebody's perspective. Usually the victor. You know, the only way you can really experience something is if you lived it. So, like, I've always been fascinated by like how it's like. Even when I like talking to older people, like elderly people, because they lived at a time when I wasn't alive. So I'll sit there and just pick their brains and like, yo, so how was it like back then and blah, 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 blah. And they get a kick out of it because they're like, this young guy wants to know about my life. Yeah, yeah, I want to know about your life because I wasn't around. I want to know how things were, so. Water. That's why like this bookshelf is like full of, really, like I have, who is this? Eusebius. I've got Philo, Eusebius, Josephus, Pliny, Irenaeus, the histories, who is Herodotus. These are all historians. Epic of Gilgamesh, I've got 2 different translations of that. The Memoirs of Pontius Pilate. Fox's Book of Martyrs. All of that is like history. 12 Caesars. Suetonius, Tacitus. I love history, man. Legends of the Bible, mythology, you know what I mean, where myths come from, or a lot of like, where, who were the Macedonian Grecian gods, who were the Egyptian gods, who were the Norse gods, who were, like, I want to know all that stuff, where all that stuff came from. Oh, excuse me. The Origins of Man, that's a good book. I've got Origin of the Species. That's a pretty good book. My lips are extremely chapped, which means I haven't been drinking a lot of water. I can feel it. So, I've got the Talmud, which the Talmud, it's multiple copies. It's a volume of books, but it talks about the history of Judaism and what have you. So, yeah, man, I love history, man. I love old houses. I love old buildings. I love old people. I love just learning about the past, man. Helps me to understand like what's happened, the future, well, the present. And I'm going to say this, history moves in circles. It kind of moves in tight spirals. History continuously repeats itself, but it's like there's new toys. It's like whatever's happening nowadays, it happened before. History just constantly moves in cycles. Even if you look at the music, you look at music history. Music swings from the pop bubblegum to the thoughtful introspective, back to the pop bubblegum, back to the thoughtful introspective. And if you don't know how to anticipate it, you'll never be able to take advantage of it. You know, I think it's making a shift now back to the thoughtful introspective. You know, it's gone through this extended period of pop, dribble, you know, and it's going back to the really thoughtful, introspective stuff, you know. But it's not quite like the last era of the thoughtful, introspective stuff. That's why I say it moves in tight spirals. It never comes back to the exact same thing. The next generation always changes it slightly, so it moves in spirals. It doesn't move in circles, you know. You know, so yeah. Third set. I think life is a series of levels. Life is a series of levels. I think with each level has a particular struggle and temptation that you experience. I think if you don't master the one level, you're never going to get to the other level. You know, and most people get to a certain level and they're content. You know, you should never be content. That shouldn't be everything you chase. But I think there's a lesson in the level that you're at, and until you get that lesson and you master that level and you learn that level, you take them with you to the next level. And those are the people that are going to ground you. They're going to keep you stable. They're going to tell you the things you need to hear, not just the things you want to hear. You know what I mean? They're going to keep you grounded. I think that's the whole key to life, man, is to constantly strive to get to the next level. You know, and I don't mean it might be the next financial level, but it can't only be the next financial level. If you get to a high level financially, then you probably got to choose another level. You know, there might be, you know, you could choose a high, because once you get to the thing about prosperity is, with prosperity tends to come decadence. You know, the cliche is that people be, you know, do, like, if you look at this whole Diddy saga, Diddy's not the only person. He's not the only person. You gotta, you know, you have to, there's an old term, success takes you where character cannot sustain you. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of times, once you get to a certain level, people won't work with you if they find out you don't have a wife and family. Because a wife and family grounds you. it keeps you grounded. You have to be grounded. You have to be stable to be with a wife and a child. You have to be grounded and stable. I gotta come up with something. I gotta speak on Saturday. I gotta give a speech on Saturday. Which I'm gonna work on that today. I just remembered it. I got asked yesterday. A friend of mine, he was just asking me questions, and he's like, "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think this? And what do you think that?" And I was just like, "Well, it's this and it's that, and it's, this is what it is, bro. This is what it is." And he was like, "Man, I never thought of that." I was like, "Yeah, bro. It's this and it's that and it's this and it's that." And he's like, "Well, what do you think we should do?" I said, "This conversation we're having, we need to share that. That's what we need to share. We need to share this conversation that we're having." He's like, "Well, better yet, you want to speak?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll speak. No problem." So it's a good thing because I kind of spoke on a lot of what I'm going to be sharing already. So I have a framework, and I have a framework. But he was just asking my opinions on things, and he was just asking my opinion on things. And it was crazy because I feel like God has been dropping like little nuggets of information and insight. And it all culminated in the conversation me and my friend had yesterday. And we were just talking, chopping it up, and it was a good conversation. It was a really good conversation. He's just like, "Yo, man, can you speak? You mind speaking?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I don't know if he's gonna have me speak for an extended period of time. I'm just gonna break it up. Part 1, part 2, and part 3. So if because we're gonna be playing a bunch of songs, so we're probably gonna be playing a bunch of songs, and we're gonna stop, and he's gonna speak, and we'll play a bunch of songs, and we'll stop, and then I'll speak, and then we'll play a bunch of songs, and stop, and he'll speak, and play a bunch of songs, and stop, and I'll speak. I think that's kind of gonna be how it's gonna go. I think that's how it's gonna go. But it was just some insights, man, that I was kind of hitting them with, man. Hold on, get this set out. But I was just telling him some things about woof. I was telling him things about God and music. Because for me, like the thing about a gift, if you have a gift, I don't like this whole, "I'm anointed." The word is just like thrown around so much that it's lost its true meaning. If you're anointed, it just means it's a gift. Stop making it like You know, like, stop it. It's just been thrown around willy-nilly to the point where it's lost its meaning and its power, its significance. Being anointed just means it's your gift. You know, it's become a hyper-religious way of people saying you're gifted or you have a gift. But like, if you read in the Bible, man, the first person to actually, like, the thing about Christianity is you believe, you repent, you're baptized. When you're baptized, you're filled with the Holy Spirit. When you're filled with the Holy Spirit, you know, then the Spirit can move you. It's a little piece of God sitting inside of you. It's a little piece of the mind of God, the knowledge of God, sitting inside you. You know, so that you can have a glimpse of, okay, this is what God has for my life. This is what God intends for my life. And the more you feed that little glimpse of God's Spirit in you, the stronger it gets. You know, just like it's like anything. If you feed a fire, it's going to get bigger. You feed the sinful, immoral side, it's going to get bigger. If you feed the righteous, godly side, you know what I mean, it's going to get bigger. But the first person to ever receive the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of God, who was filled with like, God put His Spirit in this person. It wasn't Moses, it wasn't David, it wasn't Samuel, it wasn't Abraham. There's a guy named Bezalel. When Moses was building the tabernacle, the tents and everything, God told Moses, I filled Bezalel with my Spirit. Listen to him. And He gave all these other artisans wisdom. But He particularly gave Bezalel, who was an artist. He was a creative. The first person in the Bible to get the Holy Spirit was an artist. Was a creative. And if you look at Satan, it talks about it in Ezekiel, and it talks about it in Isaiah. Satan had pipes and trumpets and what have you built in him to play music for God. Satan guarded the throne of God. This is how important music is. Music is so important. God took an angel and gave him the ability to create music in his body because God wanted to hear music. There's 2 times in the Bible where I'm thinking right now, I'm probably going to say all this stuff Saturday. There's 2 times in the Bible where the kings were told to let the singers and the musicians stand out front when they go to march. Jehoshaphat, the first time it was with Gideon. Gideon went out, and then he put the musicians out there, and Jehoshaphat went out, and when they marched out, they put the musicians out, the singers and musicians out there. The soldiers didn't even have to fight. The Spirit of the Lord won the battle for them. David, who was a man after God's own heart, he was a warrior king. He led. There's 2 kinds of fighting generals. There's those who lead from the rear. In other words, I sit back here, you do this and that. And there's those who lead from the front. They're first leading the cavalry charge. They're out front fighting. What made Alexander the Great was he led from the front. What made Jesus a great leader was he led from the front to the point of death. David He was a warrior king who led from the front. So this dude was a man after God's own heart. But he was such a warrior that his hands were too bloody to build the temple of God. His son Solomon had to do it. That being said, he was a musician. He was a musician. He was an artist. And he went out, and when Saul was king, Saul had evil spirits tormenting him. And the only way Saul got relief was when David played music, and it soothed him. You know what I mean? It helped him to like, this is my relief. His only relief was David's harp and singing. David, he was a griot. In Africa, there's what's called griots. The griots are the people who play the music and sing the history of that particular village. If you read all of like the Psalms that we read today in the Bible, those were songs written by David. So music is very important. All of that being said, whatever is important to God, Satan tries to devalue. Marriage, gender, morals, the family unit, all of those things, and music. Whatever God values, Satan he tries to devalue. Because if you devalue things, you can just treat them all willy-nilly. You can twist them, you can contort them, you can do whatever you want. And that's how it is with music. If you don't like, even if you look at like the way music is now, music is completely devalued. You know, music is seen as oh, for me, I'm 59. Oh, you're 59 years old. You're too old to be playing drums. Why am I too old? I plan on playing drums for the rest of my life. I am a drummer. That's what I do. I do other things. I've done other things. I'm good at other things. But in my core, I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm a creative. I just happen to play drums. So that I'm never gonna outgrow that. But all of that being said, like even if you look at the streaming era that we're in, the music has totally been devalued. You know what I mean? All of these executives that are making all the money, all these guys are making the money. They have nothing to do with the business. The people who create the stuff get nothing. Music has been devalued. So, all of that being said, don't think you get bombarded with music is valueless. Music is valueless. Artists are valueless. Music is valueless. It's all valueless. Don't think you're gonna come into church and not hold the same mindset that music and art and culture has no value. You're gonna have that same mindset. You know what I mean? And that being said, it's like there needs to be a sacredness to music. Music is sacred, man. There needs if you could put a band out front and the band could win a battle, you wouldn't need nuclear wars. You wouldn't need nuclear bombs or anything like that. Like they literally put the band out there. The band played music and they ushered in the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God won the war for them. You know what I mean? Like music is sacred. Music is it's valuable. It's sacred. You know what I mean? It's part of culture. You know what I mean? And I think what happens is, especially in the church, it needs to be valued. It needs to be sacred. You know what I mean? And even to the point where I'll jump out the window, man. I see a lot of black churches, like white churches look at black churches like, oh, look at them showing off. Oh, they're doing all this. They're doing too much with the music ministry. Look at them. They're showing off. It's the same thing that happened when the Europeans came to Africa. Not even just Africa. When they experienced other cultures and they said, oh, they're doing too much. That's vulgar. What do you mean? And it's the same thing if you read in the Bible where King David was so happy he was dancing out of his clothes. And his wife, Micaiah, or whatever her name is, it starts with an M. That was his wife. His wife looked down on him. She was like, oh, he's just being so vulgar. And you know what happened? She got cursed with barrenness. She never had a child. Because she looked down, because he was praising with all his heart, with all his mind, with all his strength, to the point where he was out there naked, danced out of his clothes. And she looked down on him. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, bro, like it's you know, you can't, like, there's that whole judgment thing, man. You can't, some people worship God with their hands in the air, like looking up in the sky. Some people worship God like this. I'm the type of guy, I worship God like this. I don't look down on people doing this. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, I think there's a cultural thing that we're missing. There's a cultural component and there's a sacredness that has been taken out of music, that makes music dry and sterile and it's bland. You know, it loses its soul. So, you know, and that's not just like, I don't want to make this, oh, it's anti-white. It's not just that, because white people experienced it, because they did it to the Irish. You know, the Irish folk songs, you know, Gaelic folk songs, we'll have German folk songs. Like, there's always somebody who comes along and is like, ugh. Like what? Nah, that ain't working. You know, so you know what I mean? When you take the essence of what something is out of it, it just loses. It's kind of like this. There's always a new product that comes out. For example, a shampoo. There's a new kind of shampoo out. And the shampoo works great. It works really, really good. It cleanses, it moisturizes your hair, and what have you. And then, it's a small-time company. But they sell the company. And, once they sell the company, the big corporation takes over and they say, okay, you know, in the spirit of making more money for their investors, what they do is they say, well, it's this ingredient. Well, why don't we use that ingredient? It's cheaper. Does the same thing and it's cheaper. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, we could save more money. What they use that other ingredient? Well, we could save more money by using that ingredient instead of that ingredient. You know what I mean? So the product becomes cheaper to make. The customer still paying the same price. The product is cheaper to make. All the savings get bumped up to the investors. Meanwhile, the product is cheaper. Nobody wants to use it anymore, and it's garbage. Like you buy it, you're like, how come this stuff don't work no more? Well, they sold it to a bigger company, and the bigger company stripped out all the essential chemicals or essential ingredients that actually make it work, and they stripped it out because they're trying to make money for the investors. So it's the same thing, man. You know what I mean? If you strip the essence of if you strip the essence of the music, it just becomes, nobody wants to hear it anymore, man. It's like it sounds fake. It sounds like garbage. It's like nobody wants this, you know. Except we're in a day and age where it's like, if you say it's garbage, oh, you're hate. No, it's garbage. It's not what it used to be. It's garbage, you know. Like you literally are just babbling over the microphone. You know, they just market it, you know. As far as secular music, there's nothing you can really do about that. There's nothing you can really do. There's something you can really do, but this, you know, that's not my concern. In terms of music in the church, yeah, there's a lot you can do, man. You know what I mean? You got to get back to the whole spiritual aspect of it. You got to get back to the sacredness of it. And then he asked me another question. He was like, well, you know, I first started off, I said the musicianship. You know, I said, I strive to be excellent on my instrument, not to get YouTube views. It's nice. They pay me. I get paid by YouTube. Sure, it's nice. You know, but that's not why I do it. I'm not in bars and clubs. Look at me, look at me. Whenever I'm doing a performance, I'm playing for the music. If somebody throws me a drum solo, cool. But I'm playing for the music. I'm making sure people are out there dancing or throwing their hands up or quoting the lyrics or whatever. I primarily do this because I want to be excellent for the congregation. I want to bring my best foot forward for the congregation. You know what I mean? For worship. That's why I do it, you know. But that takes a back seat, you know. I said you can't make everybody, like if you're doing it for your sake, then it starts to become look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. If you're doing it for God's sake, let me get a charger. Probably off. There it is. You know. If you're doing it for God's sake, like, you know, he was like, well, what do you think we need to work on in the music industry? I said, man, we need to work on excellence, bro. I said, I try to be as excellent as possible on my instrument, not for everything else. Not, you know, I was like, YouTube is cool. Performances are cool. But ultimately, if I'm not on YouTube, and I'm not playing at different parks or whatever, or in a bar playing, or in a club, whatever, or in some studio or whatever recording, I'm ultimately, my primary focus is being excellent for the upliftment of the congregation. I said, but that's secondary. I said, the primary thing is it needs to be like, you need to realize the position you're in. You are ushering in, as a musician in church, you are ushering in the Spirit of God. We're right up there with the preachers. We're right up there with, one of our, Saj, he's one of our evangelists. Jim, he's another one of our, evangelists. Saj Sharma and Jim Lenahan. They're our evangelists. They are our evangelists. We're right up there with them. There's a reason why we play first. We are ushering in the Spirit of God. We are preparing people for worship. If we're not excellent, then God is not going to use janky vessels for His Spirit. He's not. He's not going to use half-serious, janky vessels for His Spirit. He wants excellence. He had the best artisans, the best wood. He literally, when the temple was being built, when Solomon built the temple, Solomon got the best stuff. All of that stuff was from his father. David was a man after God's own heart. So if David was like, hey man, if he's like, look man, we got to do this for God. We got to really do this for God. You got the best. You go to Lebanon. You want some cedar? Go to Lebanon. They chopped. You go to Lebanon now. You ain't gonna find no trees. They chopped them all down. You know what I mean? But not just Solomon, but a lot of people. Cedar from Lebanon was world renowned, so they completely decimated the forest, cedar forest. But my point is, David was like, look man, I surrounded myself with wise men, with wise artisans. This is what got only the best. We're not going to skimp on this. You know what I mean? So if the best go into building His temple, then don't you think only the best, only the highest level of musicianship should be playing for Him? Should be playing to usher in His Spirit. If you go up there willy-nilly, it's like, come on man, you're using broken, it's like a bad sacrifice. It's like you're giving lame sacrifices. The Bible talks about that. It's like you're giving lame sacrifices. You're giving lame sacrifices to God. If you go up there willy-nilly talking about, oh, well, I'm just a weekend warrior. No, you're not. You're not. Go sit down. We're better off without you. You're tainting our sacrifice. We're better off without you. You know what I mean? And I told him, I was like, man, we got to return to the sacredness of the music ministry, bro. We got to return back to that, man. We just been throwing people up there who we know can't sing. But we just been like, oh, you can, even for instance, my wife, she'll tell you, she's like, she can't sing a lick. She couldn't sing if her life depended on it. She can't hold the pitch. She can't sing. She was like, could you believe they asked me to sing? This was years ago. And we were just making a joke about it. But she was like, yeah, they asked me to sing. I was singers. And she said I would literally sing the first note, and then all of a sudden, when everybody else is singing, she would stop singing and just mouth the words. But that's how careless, or that's how it's kind of disrespectful. Casually, it's flippant. It's casually disrespectful, that it it's just really that's what you're doing with God's praising God and worship. There's no excellence. You know what I mean? So I think there has to be a return to excellence. A return of sacredness. You know what I mean? Like, this is serious, bro. Like, this is really, this ain't something you go through the motions with. This is serious. And you gotta bring your best foot forward. You bring your best foot forward to your boss, you know, when you gonna be on time with your boss. You're gonna be smiling and cheesing with your boss, but you ain't gonna do it for God. You're gonna make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's with your boss, but you ain't gonna do it for God. You're gonna make sure you're excellent at your craft with your boss, but you ain't gonna do it for God. Like, you know what I mean? You're showing partiality to a man. You know what I mean? And you're saying, oh, I worship God, I believe in God. No, you don't. I can tell. I can tell. You know what I mean? You come in here and you give half effort to God, but you give the full effort to your boss, to a man, you know what I mean? And God gave you the job. But you know what I mean? It's kind of like, nah, man. It's got to be, it's like, I'm not going to say it's got to be the other way around, but, because of course you need your money, but the Bible says do all things as if for the Lord. You know what I mean? It doesn't say do all things as if for the Lord, except when you go to church, you can give willy-nilly. No, it says do all things. All is all-inclusive. All things as if for the Lord. You know what I mean? And, I'm like, man, you gotta do your best, man. Oy. All right. I really don't feel like doing this, but I gotta. And I've taken that mindset with a lot of things. Do all things as if for the Lord. I've gotten raises like that. I've had people say, yo man, I've never seen anybody with your work ethic or your integrity. In the back of my mind, I'm like, if you knew me years ago, I'd probably rob you at gunpoint. But my life is different. My life is different now. Back then I had no integrity. So, I think I'm going to use a little bit of that. I'm going to speak on that. Of course, condense it down. To the essential nuggets. I don't know how long he's going to have me speak. I just want to, like, our church used to have what's called the A&E ministry, Arts and Entertainment Ministry. It just broke up. I don't know why. I don't know why they got rid of the A&E ministry. And a lot of people in A&E were like, I don't know, a lot of them, I think it was actors, singers, dancers, musicians, I think we definitely need to bring that back, A&E ministry. We definitely need to bring it back. I remember I wanted to go to A&E. I wanted to. I thought about it, but I was like, Also, I think A&E became a place where people could just be wishy-washy and willy-nilly. They could hide in A&E and be wishy-washy and willy-nilly. They could be kind of like loosey-goosey, willy-nilly, But, yeah, that's where, I don't know if I might be dating myself, the speech from Arrested Development, he was there. There was a lot of people there. Rappers or what have you. People from Dungeon Family. If y'all know who Dungeon Family is, that's Outkast, Goody Mob, Future. He's Dungeon Family. So there were people from Dungeon Family. It was a good amount. It was a lot of people. Um, then it just dissolved. Um, there was a lot of change that happened in our fellowship of churches, and it just dissolved. I think they need to bring it back. I definitely think they need to bring it back. Um, I think what would happen is one of the leaders would be the lead. I think the people who should lead it should be Levi and Michelle Young, my two friends. They should lead it. They would probably definitely ask me to be part of it. You know, part of leadership. They would definitely ask me. But they would ask me. They would ask another friend of mine, Stacy Brown. Although Stacy wasn't in A&E, he's a pretty well-known guy here in the Atlanta music scene. They would ask Stacy Brown. He just got his doctorate. Doctorate of theology. And what he would have is he would have these nights called Dope Communion, where he and his band, it's a jazz band, they would sit there and they would have different musicians. He would say prayers or like speak between songs. You know, it was very kind of like intimate. You know what I mean? And he wrote his thesis, his doctoral thesis on fellowship or worship outside of the walls of the church. That's what he got that's how he got his doctorate in theology. So my wife wants to get a doctorate. She told me what it was for, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, honey, I think you should. I think you should get your doctorate. I'm gonna end up going back to school. Definitely. I'm definitely gonna end up going back to school. For theology. Yeah, I'm definitely going back. I've been questioning it. I've been kicking it around for years. For decades. But and I just been considering it, and now I'm like, yeah, I really want to, go back. I definitely want to go back. I don't know what school I'm going to go to. I'll probably go to Mercer. Yeah, I'll probably go to Mercer. I'll either go to Mercer or even UGA, because my wife, she went to AU and she got her master's at UGA. So, she's kicking around getting her doctorate. She's like, it'll probably be at UGA. They have a good doctoral program. My daughter, I'm like, she's going to be a doctor, so a dermatologist. She's gonna be some kind of like forensic dermatologist. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Something specialized. Something like that. Something highly specialized in dermatology. At first, she wanted to be a pediatrician because she loves babies, but she was like, "Yeah, but I don't like dealing with their parents. I love the babies. I don't like the parents." You know. So, you know. But yeah, I've been kicking around going back to school for theology for decades, man. You know. But life is lifing right now. And yeah, life is lifing. Got a lot going on right now. Ah, ah, Life is lifing. IDIB, what up? What is up? But yeah. Outside of that, man. Just like I said, life is life. You know. I don't really have the time to go back to school right now. You know, I don't really have the time to go back to school right now, excuse me. Got a lot going on. A lot going on. You know. A lot of moving parts right now that need tending and taking care of. Like a friend of mine, Ben Barnett, he got his doctorate. His kids were almost out of school and off on their own. My other friend, Stacy Brown, he got his doctorate. His kids were out of school, out of college, out of school. So it takes a lot. Another one of my friends, Sajin, he just got his doctorate, but his kids are out of school. You know, it's like if you're going for your doctorate, it's best to either be young and single and young, you know, or older and you're like an empty nester. You know, because there's like so much, you know, or you like a young married or something like that. Like a friend of mine, Mia Hong, her and my boy Will, they're married. They don't have any kids. She's going for her doctorate. So, you know. You know, so. But they're young married, they don't have kids. They're good. You know. I miss them. They're good people. They're really good people. Third set. 2 more left. Oof. Oof. It's crazy because you don't realize how much weight and strength correlate with each other. I remember being 242, being able to bench 360 easy. Easy. You know, I felt good, I felt strong with my skeletal structure. It weighs heavy on your knees and your ankles and your hips. So I had to lose that weight, man. I had to lose it. Because it's a lot. It's just a lot on you. You know. Well, like that. Oh, 2 minutes ago. Most liked video, reel by Ryan Davis. Huh? Ryan Davis! Oh man, I definitely want to see that. I like Ryan Davis. He's a funny guy. But yeah. I had to lose weight. I miss it. I still miss it. I still miss being a monster. And I was cut too. I was like, ugh. I was a monster. I miss it. You know, but I don't miss them pains, them hip pains, and them knee pains, and them ankle pains. I don't miss that at all. At all. You know. Is it like my knees would hurt? You know. My hips and knees would hurt. All right. Fourth set. Oof. Oof. Almost couldn't sit up. That's not the highest, 104. $102. Dropping down. Six, 5. $87. We're still dropping. MGT, MKTG, I don't know who that is. Levi, Cymatics. Well, that's it. Thank God.
13. I really don't want to do this set, but I gotta. Whew. Wow, there's 4 people out there. I'm surprised. Last 4. We had last set. So long.
Bigger MMA gloves. Every time I put them on, I tape up my hands, and I put those on. Your hands feel like they're gonna lose circulation. You know, that's how tight they are. I can't really tape my hands when I use them. I can't tape my hands up. I can, but it's like extra tight. So I gotta get it. And plus, those MMA gloves are kind of worn out. I gotta get new ones.